¿El futuro? Despierta. Bienvenido al Congreso Futuro. Despierta, conéctate, participa.
Good afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for being here, despite the muchísimo calor. I will speak in English, but my English is very Latin, so you will not have any difficulties in following me. In the last days, we had a lot of talks on the advancement of science and technology. We had a talk about galaxies and drugs, machine, artificial intelligence. I am going to speak now of something that seems to be very boring, I'm sorry, that are plants. And so plants are not just boring for many of us, they are also incredibly unknown. Nuestro maravilloso mundo desconocido, there is nothing more desconocido than plants. Just to give you an example, you know how many plants there are on the planet. I don't mean the number of plants that, of course, it's impossible to measure, but the biomass. The biomass of the plant, it's 97.5%. There are different estimations, but they are only in this range. 97.5% of the biomass, or everything that is living on the planet, is made by plant. And is it possible not to appreciate that we are completely depending on plant? All the food that we eat is produced by plant. All the oxygen that we are breathing is produced by plant. 90% of the medicinal that we are using are for the first time found in plant. Most of the energy that we are using is produced or was produced by plant. So, underestimating such an incredible world, I think it's really a pity. Well, now I will show you a very short 2 seconds of a movie by a very famous documentarist, David Attenborough. Now, David Attenborough is by far the most brilliant documentarist living in activity. And he is also a plant lover. He did some of the most wonderful documentary about the life of plants. But even him, when he speaks about animals, tend to remove the fact that plants exist. Now, we have no audio, but I am doing the blue whale, he is saying, the biggest creature that exists on the planet. That's absolutely wrong. It's not true. The blue whale is the biggest animal that exists on the planet. The biggest creature that exists on the planet is this one. It's a wonderful, magnificent Sequoiadendron giganteum. This is a living organism that may reach a mass that is 100 times bigger than the mass of the blue whale. Well, of course, David Attenborough is not alone. He is in good company. For example, God did the same mistake. In the Noah Ark story, there is no mention about plant. Now, this is a very nice representation from Antonio da Bassano of the Ark, of the story of the Ark of the Noah Arks. And, well, there is no mention about plant. There are very precise instructions that for Noah, he need to take 2 of every kind of bird, 2 of every kind of animal, and of every kind of a creature that move along the ground to be kept alive, but no one is mentioning plant. Probably because they don't move. So it's quite clear now that the movement is important. Even Aristotle say that plants have a very low level of anima because they were not able to move. And anima, soul, in Latin, anima, it's much more interesting as word because it's also the root of many words, many terms as animate. Animate means someone that is able to move. Well, because the plants were unable to move, they were without anima, without soul. But is this true? It's true that plants are unable to move? Of course, no. Every one of you know that plants are incredibly, they are able to show an incredible number of movement. And the first one to show some movement was Wilhelm Pfeffer in 1898, just a few months after the invention of the cinematograph by Lumière brother. This German botanist made a small modification of the techniques by inventing what today we call time-lapse. And by the time-lapse, we can see the wonderful movements that plants are able to display. In this case, we are looking at two Desmodium and Mimosa pudica plants that are showing movement very different between day and night. Well, today we have different technical possibility, of course, and so we can show more detail about the movement. Now, this is the movement of a pine cone, opening and closing according to the humidity, the opening of a dandelion. In this movement, there are 20 different movements. Every single seeds has its own parachute that is opening and closing according to the humidity. Or these other seeds that is called Erodium cicutarium, and it's able to move on the soil and trying to find a place where to drill himself in the soil. All such movements are fascinating, and they have also another incredible characteristic feature. They are all passive movements. What I mean with passive, they don't require any internal energy, but they rely just on the energy of the environment. So it's something that it's inherently linked to the way the material is built. Just now imagine how would be a material built by taking inspiration by plant that would be able to move just relying on the energy of the environment. Well, of course, there are also active movements, very expensive in terms of energy, like in this case, a Venus flytrap that is catching a snail. The Venus flytrap, such movement, it's very similar to the movement of the animal. It starts with an action potential, but after, in spite of muscle, because plants have no muscle, there is an osmotic actuator that at the end have the same result. Look at the graceful movement of this young bean. It's just 2 hours in the life of a young bean, and he's moving all the time the leaves to catch the best light, but also to understand, to sense the environment around him. Or these young sunflowers. Here we have a lot of movement, so we cannot say that plants don't move. After such movie, they move a lot. And if you ask me what they are doing, I would say they are playing. I know that it's very difficult to use a term as playing for plant. But this is exactly what they are doing. So they are starting a relationship. They are trained to the adult life. If you grow a sunflower alone, and after when he is adult, you put the same sunflower in the field with the other one, he will be unable to survive because it will be fought by the other plant, and because it's unable to start the right relationship. We know that the plants are moving a lot, of course, but they are all the same very different from the animals. They are sessile organisms. What means sessile? Sessile, it's a technical term. That means that they are unable to not to move, but to displace themselves from one place to the other. They are rooted. So they are rooted in the ground. They cannot move themselves in another place. But being rooted change everything, because you are not able to run away. You are subjected to predator. Every single animal can hit you. And so your body must be very different. And this is why plants are actually not even individual. Individuus, it's a Latin term, again, that came from in, that means no, dividus, divisible. An individuus, it's something that it's not divisible. Every animal, with just few exceptions, are individual because you cannot cut in two an animal. And on the contrary, in plants, you can remove 90% of the body of many plants. You can cut the plants in hundreds of pieces, and mostly you are not going to kill the plant, but you are propagating the plant. But this is an incredible difference because your body must be very different. For example, in plant, you will never find an organ, a specific organ, because an organ is a weak point, is very efficient in performing specific function, as in the human body, but it's also a weak point. So just as a general rule, the plants distributed along their body what the animals concentrate in specific organs. What I mean is that the plants are able to breathe without lung, they are able to digest without stomach, they are able to see without eyes, in a less efficient way, but more distributed, so that interests all the body of the plant. And now, some philosophical question. Are plant conscious organisms? First of all, what is consciousness? It's incredibly difficult to define. But the first one that tried to define consciousness was the great British philosopher John Locke, that in his essay concerning human understanding wrote that the consciousness is the perception of what passes in a man's own mind. So just humans are conscious, because you need to be a man and you need to have a mind to be conscious. But the time passed, the knowledge enlarged, and in 2012, a very distinguished group of preeminent scientists in Cambridge make this declaration on consciousness, where they wrote, "It's obvious to everyone in this room that animals have consciousness, but it's not obvious to the rest of the world." Well, it's a huge step forward, because now all the animals are endowed with consciousness. But of course, there is no mention of plant. They made a mistake. It's the same mistake of God, that it's probably something that we can expect from a group of scientists from Cambridge, the only kind of mistake. But why plants are not in the group? Why they are not in this elected club? It's probably because they have no brain. But as I told you, plants they are not just deprived of brain. They have no organs at all. But they manage to have all the function in different way. Now there is a wonderful definition of consciousness that I like a lot, that it's from Robert Van Gaalik, and it has been published in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, that say that the consciousness is the quality or state of being aware of an external object. It's very easy. It's something more important that it's experimentally possible to do, to try. And so to be aware of the environment, of the space around you, first of all, you need to be sensitive, of course. Are plants sensitive? A lot. Much more than animals. And it's really trivial, because the reason is always the same. An animal can run away, have the possibility to run away if there is something going wrong. The plant, no. The only possibility for plant to survive is to sense that something is changing in the environment very early. Here we have a parasitic plant. This plant is called cuscuta. After germination, this plant has 3 days to find a host to parasitize. On the contrary, it's destined to die. And look how this plant this cuscuta is able to find the tomato and without any, so demonstrating that he is perfectly able to understand what is around the plant. And he's also able to make choice in this case, we have the cuscuta growing between a tomato plant and a wheat plant. And after some round of testing, the plants always directed toward the tomato that is most tasteful. And you can repeat this many times, and all the times the cuscuta will choose the tomato. Of course, if tomato is not available, even wheat can work. So they are able to make a choice. But you can say, okay, but cuscuta is something a little bit strange. It's a parasitic plant. It's not able even to photosynthesize. This is a bean that it's, do you know, everyone know that bean like to grow on the supports. And look how this bean is able to know where is the pole, know where is the support. So we don't need to spend too much words. He knows where is the support. He's trying with all his efforts to reach the pole. No, I don't think that there is any doubt. No, because once there were at least one of my colleagues that told me that everyone knows that beans grow toward the right. Anyway, at the end, he is able to catch the pole, and you can see that a last effort is able to catch the pole, and you can see now how relaxed is the movement of the leaves, how change the behavior of the plant. Okay, this is, I think it's a demonstration that such being was conscious of an external physical object, but are they conscious also of the behavior of other organisms? So let's have a look at this other movie. This is so I make the experiment more complicated. I put a pole among two beans, and you can see that after a sensing period, they are competing for reaching the pole, and there is a winner and a loser. But what is interesting is the behavior of the loser. The loser sensed that he was losing the race and changed immediately direction, searching for alternative. What he's doing now is trying to find something to grasp on the background. So he completely changed the direction. And at the end, because there is nothing to grasp, he gave up, showing also intelligence, not just consciousness. Now you could ask me, but if plants are so wonderful, able to do all this kind of stuff, and this is just a scratch of the surface because we have no time, but plants are able to communicate, to have a social life, to defend themselves in a wonderful way, why we are not aware of this incredible world of the plant? Well, there is something that it's well known. It's called plant blindness. It's plant blindness. It's a kind of way of our brain works. And at the beginning of our evolution, this plant blindness was very useful for us because we're preventing an overflow of information arriving for all this green stuff that were surrounding us. But today, plant blindness is something that can be dangerous because it's preventing us to recognize that plants are very complex organisms, and they prevent us to understand that we are completely depending on plant. I will finish just giving you this number that it's even amazing. 70% of the flowering plant on the planet and of the plants that we know, and they are estimated to be just 40%, are in danger of extinction. 70% of what we are depending is in danger of extinction. And from the 50s until today, so in the last 60 years, every day we are losing 35,000 hectares of forest. So my efforts are in popularizing the plants as very complex and even organisms endowed with consciousness is to try to to protect them, because protecting them, we are protecting ourselves. Thank you very much.
¿El futuro? Despierta. Bienvenido al Congreso Futuro. Despierta, conéctate, participa.